Most of the time, when someone insults you, dismisses you, or tries to bring you down, it has very little to do with you and everything to do with them. People are deeply flawed, struggling with their own insecurities, biases, and unresolved issues. Understanding this is one of the most powerful ways to free yourself from being bothered by others. When someone lashes out, what they're really doing is projecting their internal chaos onto the external world. If a person is constantly negative, bitter, or aggressive, it's rarely because they have some special insight into your character. More often than not, it's because they are dealing with their own unresolved frustrations and you just happen to be in their line of sight. Most people live in a state of internal conflict. They carry fears about their inadequacies, failures, and weaknesses, and instead of confronting them, they displace those emotions onto others. If someone insults your intelligence, it might not be because you're wrong, but because they feel insecure about their own understanding. If someone mocks your appearance, it's often because they struggle with their own self-permitted. People who are truly confident and at peace with themselves don't go out of their way to tear others down. They don't need to. This realization alone can transform the way you respond to criticism. Instead of immediately reacting with anger or defensiveness, you can pause and ask yourself, what's really going on here? If you look beyond the words being said and consider the emotional state of the person speaking them, you'll often find that their words reveal more about them than about you. But here's the difficult part. This truth applies to you as well. Just as other people project their insecurities onto the world, so do you. If you find yourself frequently irritated by others, constantly offended, or always looking for ways to prove people wrong, it's worth asking whether you're engaging in the same behavior you dislike in others. Are you using external conflicts as a way to avoid dealing with something internal? Are you quick to judge others because it distracts you from your own shortcomings? The human mind has a natural tendency to avoid self-examination because it's uncomfortable. It's much easier to blame others than to acknowledge your own weaknesses. But the more you understand this about yourself, the more you can understand it about others. And once you do that, their words and actions lose their sting. When you recognize that most people are operating from a place of fear, confusion, or pain, you start to see them differently. You no longer view insults as personal attacks, but as glimpses into someone else's struggles. This doesn't mean you should tolerate toxic behavior or allow yourself to be disrespected, but it does mean you can approach these situations with a level of detachment. Instead of reacting emotionally, you can respond rationally. Instead of letting their chaos pull you in, you can remain stable. One of the biggest mistakes people make is assuming that the world should be fair or that others should treat them well simply because they try to be good people. But that's not how life works. People don't always operate from a place of logic or fairness. They operate from habit, conditioning, and emotional baggage. Expecting perfect treatment from imperfect people will only leave you frustrated. Instead, accept that the world is filled with flawed individuals, yourself included. Once you internalize this, you gain a kind of emotional immunity. You stop taking things personally. You stop wasting energy on unnecessary conflicts. You stop needing external validation because you realize that most opinions, both positive and negative, are shaped by personal biases rather than objective truth. The strongest people aren't the ones who never face criticism. They're the ones who understand criticism for what it really is. They don't crumble under insults, nor do they let flattery inflate their ego. They see both as reflections of the person giving them rather than absolute truths. When you reach this level of understanding, you become unshakable. You no longer need to fight every battle or prove yourself to every person who doubts you. You become someone who can observe the world with clarity rather than react to it with emotion. And that kind of strength is rare. It's the kind of strength that makes you truly untouchable. Emotions are powerful. They drive our decisions, shape our relationships, and influence how we perceive the world. But while emotions are essential to being human, They can also be a source of weakness when they override rational thought. One of the most important skills a person can develop is the ability to separate emotion from action. This does not mean suppressing emotions or pretending they don't exist. It means learning to manage them effectively so that they don't control your behavior in destructive ways. When someone insults you, dismisses your ideas, or provokes you, your immediate reaction is likely emotional. You may feel anger, frustration, or hurt. This reaction is natural, rooted in biological survival mechanisms. In ancient times, reacting quickly to threats could mean the difference between life and death. But in modern life, where conflicts are rarely life-threatening, these instinctual reactions often do more harm than good. If you respond impulsively, you give power to the very thing that triggered you. Think about the times in your life when you've reacted emotionally without thinking. Maybe you sent an angry message you later regretted. Maybe you raised your voice in an argument and made the situation worse. Maybe you walked away from an opportunity because of temporary frustration. Acting purely on emotion often leads to poor decisions, ones that create more problems than they solve. The ability to pause, reflect, and choose a rational response instead of an emotional reaction is what separates strong, competent individuals from those who are easily manipulated by their feelings. The key to mastering this is developing self-awareness. You must be able to recognize when your emotions are taking over and consciously decide to step back before acting. This is not easy. When emotions surge, they cloud judgment. Your mind becomes fixated on the immediate feeling rather than the long-term consequences of your response. Training yourself to resist this impulse takes practice. One of the most effective techniques for managing emotions is creating space between stimulus and response. If something upsets you, don't respond right away. Take a deep breath. Count to 10. Walk away if necessary. Give yourself time to process what you're feeling before deciding how to act. This brief pause can mean the difference between making a decision you later regret and responding in a way that maintains your integrity and control. Another important strategy is to reframe the situation. Ask yourself, is my reaction helping or hurting me? Is this situation as serious as it feels right now? What's the most productive way to handle this? By shifting your focus from how you feel to what the best course of action is, you take back control. You become the person who dictates the outcome, rather than being at the mercy of external events. There's also immense power in choosing not to engage. Many conflicts are fueled by emotional reactions, and if you refuse to play that game, you often win without even fighting. If someone is being rude or provocative, they are expecting a reaction. When you don't give them what they want, when you remain calm and unshaken, you take away their power over you. In many cases, this is far more effective than any retaliation could ever be. This principle applies not only to personal interactions, but also to larger life challenges. When things don't go as planned, when obstacles arise, it's easy to become frustrated or discouraged. But emotional responses rarely solve problems. Complaining doesn't fix anything. Self-pity doesn't create progress. The only thing that matters is what you do next. And the best decisions come from a place of clarity, not emotional turbulence. This is why discipline is so important. Emotionally driven people act based on how they feel in the moment. Disciplined people act based on their principles and long-term goals. They don't allow temporary feelings to derail them from what truly matters. They understand that emotions are temporary, but the consequences of their actions can be permanent. Most people live their lives according to the expectations of others. They seek approval from family, friends, society, and even strangers, allowing external validation to dictate their self-worth. The problem with this approach is that it makes you vulnerable. When your confidence depends on the opinions of others, you give them power over you. If they praise you, you feel good. If they criticize you, you feel worthless. You become a puppet, constantly reacting to the shifting judgments of the world around you. The only way to free yourself from this trap is to set your own standards for self-worth and live by them regardless of what others think. To do this, you first need to decide what truly matters to you. Most people never take the time to define their own values, so they simply adopt whatever values are imposed on them by their environment. They chase things society tells them are important: money, status, approval, without ever questioning whether those things align with their deeper purpose. As a result, they end up feeling lost, unsatisfied, and controlled by forces outside of themselves. If you want to be unshakable, you need to take control of this process. You need to consciously determine what kind of person you want to be and what principles you will live by. Once you have established your own standards, you must hold yourself accountable to them. This is where many people fail. It's easy to declare, "I don't care what others think," but much harder to actually live that way. It requires discipline and a willingness to stand alone when necessary. If you decide that honesty is a core value, for example, you must be honest even when lying would be easier. If you decide that self-respect is a priority, you must walk away from situations that compromise your dignity, even if others don't understand. True confidence comes from knowing that you live according to your own principles, not from the fleeting approval of others. One of the biggest challenges you will face in this process is social pressure. People don't like it when someone refuses to conform. When you stop seeking approval, some people will try to pull you back in. They will criticize you, mock you, or attempt to make you feel guilty for not following the script they expect you to follow. This is a test. If you give in, you prove that their opinions still have power over you. But if you stand firm, you send a message, not just to them, but to yourself, that you are in control of your own life. The reality is that no matter what you do, someone will always disapprove. If you try to please everyone, you will end up pleasing no one, least of all yourself. The people who truly matter, those who respect and care about you, will admire your strength, even if they don't always agree with you. And those who resent you for living on your own terms were never worth impressing in the first place. Another important aspect of setting your own standards is learning to measure success by your own criteria. Many people base their sense of achievement on comparisons with others. They feel good about themselves when they are ahead and insecure when they fall behind. But this mindset is a trap. There will always be someone richer, smarter, or more successful than you in some way. If you define your worth by comparison, you will always find a reason to feel inadequate. The only way to escape this cycle is to measure success by your own progress, not by how you stack up against others. This means setting personal goals that are meaningful to you. Maybe your goal is to develop a certain skill, build a business, strengthen your character, or improve your health. Whatever it is, judge yourself by whether you are improving, not by whether you are winning some imaginary competition. If you are better today than you were yesterday, you are succeeding. And if you stay committed to your own path, external validation becomes irrelevant. There is immense freedom in this way of living. When you set your own standards and live by them, you are no longer at the mercy of shifting opinions, unrealistic expectations, or arbitrary comparisons. You become independent in the truest sense, not just financially or physically, but emotionally and mentally. You define your own worth, and that makes you untouchable. The world will always try to mold you into something convenient, something predictable, something that fits within its expectations. But the strongest people refuse to be shaped by external forces. They decide who they are and live accordingly. And in doing so, they achieve something far greater than approval. They achieve self-respect. Life is unpredictable, messy, and often completely absurd. No matter how much you plan, how carefully you structure your life, or how much effort you put into controlling your circumstances, unexpected things will happen. People will say ridiculous things. Situations will turn chaotic for no logical reason. You will face setbacks, failures, and moments of sheer frustration. But instead of letting these things drive you to anger, stress, or despair, there is another approach, one that can make you untouchable in the face of life's randomness. That approach is learning to laugh at the absurdity of it all. Most people take themselves and the world far too seriously. They act as if everything that happens is a personal attack, as if every inconvenience is a catastrophe. They expect life to be fair, for people to behave rationally, and for the world to make sense. And when these expectations are inevitably shattered, they respond with frustration, disappointment, or even rage. But the truth is, much of life is simply nonsensical. People are unpredictable, mistakes are inevitable, and no matter how much effort you put into avoiding chaos, some amount of it is unavoidable. When you learn to see the humor in life's absurdities, you take away their power over you. Imagine someone cuts you off in traffic and then flips you off as if you're the problem. You have two choices. You can get angry, honk your horn, yell, and let it ruin your mood for the next hour, or you can recognize the ridiculousness of the situation. This person, for whatever reason, is so consumed by their own nonsense that they're blaming you for their mistake. Instead of anger, you could just laugh, shake your head, and move on. The result? You stay in control of your own emotions instead of letting a stranger dictate how you feel. This mindset doesn't just apply to small annoyances, it's useful for dealing with bigger disappointments as well. Maybe you worked hard for a promotion only for it to be given to someone less qualified. Maybe a business venture you put years into suddenly collapses. Maybe you find yourself in an argument with someone who is completely irrational and unwilling to listen. In these moments, it's easy to feel frustrated, to take things personally, or to spiral into negativity. But when you step back and observe the situation from a distance, you often realize just how absurd it all is. You start to see life less as a rigid structure that must always go according to plan, and more as a chaotic, unpredictable play, one in which you are merely an actor. There is a profound freedom in recognizing that so much of what happens is outside of your control. The world is not a neatly organized system where good things happen to good people and everything always makes sense. It is full of randomness, contradictions, and paradoxes. Accepting this reality allows you to stop being surprised by life's unfairness and instead to embrace it with a sense of humor. Think about some of the best comedians in the world. What do? They take serious, frustrating, or painful aspects of life and expose the humor in them. They remind us that the things we stress about are often, when viewed from the right angle, completely ridiculous. They help us laugh at life's chaos instead of being consumed by it. You don't have to be a comedian to adopt this perspective. You just have to develop the ability to step outside of yourself and see the humor in situations instead of always reacting emotionally. This doesn't mean you should never take anything seriously. There are moments in life that require a serious approach, times of tragedy, personal responsibility, or important decision-making. But even in these moments, maintaining the ability to find lightness and perspective can help prevent you from being overwhelmed. Even in hardship, there are moments of irony, absurdity, and humor that, if recognized, can help you move forward with strength rather than despair. The ability to laugh at life's absurdity is also a form of resilience. It keeps you from being easily offended, constantly frustrated, or perpetually anxious. If you can laugh at a situation, it means you are not controlled by it. You have separated yourself from the chaos and taken a position of observation rather than emotional entanglement. This is a powerful skill because it allows you to navigate life with ease, to let go of things that don't matter, and to remain mentally strong even in difficult situations. At the end of the day, life is not meant to be a constant battle against frustration and disappointment. It is meant to be lived, experienced, and even enjoyed, even in the face of setbacks and unpredictability. Those who take themselves too seriously suffer more than they need to. Those who can laugh, even in difficult moments, find a way to move forward with greater peace and strength. So, the next time life throws something absurd your way, whether it's a petty insult, an unexpected failure, or an irrational situation, pause for a moment. Instead of reacting with anger or frustration, ask yourself, is this really worth getting upset over? Or is it just another example of life's endless absurdity? More often than not, you'll find that laughter is the best response. And when you can laugh, You can move on without letting anything drag you down. Competence is one of the most valuable traits a person can develop. It is the foundation of self-respect, confidence, and independence. When you are competent, you don't need to rely on luck, the approval of others, or external validation to feel secure in yourself. You know that no matter what happens, you have the ability to handle it. Competence is what separates those who succeed from those who merely wish for success. It is the result of discipline, learning, and experience, and it cannot be faked. The problem is that many people want the rewards of competence without putting in the effort required to develop it. They want to be respected, admired, or successful, but they are unwilling to go through the long and often tedious process of mastering a skill, improving their knowledge, or refining their abilities. This is why so many people rely on shortcuts, exaggerating their skills, pretending to know more than they do, or seeking unearned recognition. But deep down, they know the truth. And that insecurity eventually shows itself. Developing real competence requires a shift in mindset. Instead of seeking quick results, you must commit to the process of getting better every day, no matter how small the improvement. Mastery is not achieved in a single leap. It is built gradually, through countless hours of practice, study, and experience. The most skilled individuals in any field, whether in business, sports, art, or leadership, did not wake up one day with their abilities fully formed. They worked for them, consistently and deliberately. One of the first steps in becoming competent is acknowledging what you don't know. Many people avoid this because admitting ignorance can feel uncomfortable. But in reality, accepting your lack of knowledge is a sign of strength, not weakness. It is the only way to truly learn. If you pretend to know everything, you close yourself off from growth. But if you approach life with curiosity and humility, you open the door to real improvement. Once you recognize where you need to improve, the next step is deliberate practice. This means not just going through the motions, but actively working to improve specific aspects of your abilities. If you want to be a better writer, it's not enough to just write. You must analyze your weaknesses, study great writing, and push yourself to refine your skills. If you want to be a better leader, you must observe successful leaders, understand human behavior, and practice making difficult decisions. Competence comes from focused, intentional effort over time. Another key element of competence is resilience. The process of improvement is filled with failure, setbacks, and frustration. Many people quit when they don't see immediate results, assuming they are simply not naturally talented enough. But the truth is, competence is not about natural talent, it's about perseverance. The most competent people are those who continue improving despite failure. They don't let mistakes define them. They use them as learning experiences. Every failure is an opportunity to adjust, refine, and try again. Competence also requires taking responsibility for your own growth. No one is going to hand you skills, knowledge, or expertise. You must actively seek them out. Read books, take courses, practice your craft, and surround yourself with people who challenge you to be better. Too many people wait for the right opportunity to come along before they start developing their abilities. But competence is not something you wait for. It is something you build. And when you build it, opportunities come to you. Another important aspect of competence is the ability to think critically. Many people simply absorb information without questioning it, accepting whatever they are told. But true competence comes from the ability to analyze, question, and form your own conclusions. This applies to every area of life. Whether in your career, personal life, or society at large, the ability to think independently and make sound judgments is invaluable. Competence is also tied to confidence, but it's important to distinguish between real confidence and false confidence. Many people try to appear confident by acting overly assertive, speaking loudly, or pretending to have all the answers. But true confidence comes from knowing that you are genuinely capable. When you are competent, you don't need to prove yourself with arrogance. You simply know what you're doing, and that quiet self-assurance speaks louder than any forced bravado. Perhaps the greatest advantage of competence is the freedom it brings. When you are highly skilled, knowledgeable, and capable, you don't have to depend on others to solve your problems. You don't have to fear uncertainty because you trust in your ability to adapt and figure things out. Competence gives you control over your own life. Ultimately, developing competence is a lifelong process. No matter how skilled you become, there is always more to learn and new levels to reach. The moment you think you've mastered everything is the moment you stop growing. The best people in any field remain students forever, always striving to improve. So, if you want to be truly strong, independent, and successful, commit yourself to competence. Accept that it won't be easy, accept that it will take time, but also recognize that every step forward, no matter how small, makes you better than you were before. And in the long run, that is what separates those who succeed from those who only wish they had. In a world filled with chaos, uncertainty, and emotional volatility, the ability to be a stabilizing force is one of the most valuable traits a person can develop. Most people are easily swayed by their emotions, reacting impulsively to every situation, allowing external circumstances to dictate their inner state. When things go wrong, they panic. When faced with adversity, they crumble. Their emotions rise and fall unpredictably, making them unreliable, inconsistent, and sometimes even destructive. But those who learn to be a source of stability, both for themselves and for those around them, become pillars of strength in an unpredictable world. To be a stabilizing force, the first step is to develop emotional control. This does not mean suppressing emotions or pretending not to feel anything. It means understanding your emotions, recognizing when they arise, and refusing to let them dictate your actions. Most people operate reactively. When they feel anger, they lash out. When they feel fear, they withdraw. When they feel anxious, they panic. A stabilizing force, on the other hand, recognizes these emotions but chooses to respond rationally rather than react impulsively. They take a step back, assess the situation, and act with intention rather than emotion. This ability is especially important in moments of crisis. When things go wrong, whether in personal life, work, or society, most people panic, blame others, or become consumed by stress. But a stabilizing force remains calm. They assess the situation logically, keep their emotions in check, and provide reassurance to those around them. This is why great leaders, mentors, and respected figures throughout history have been those who maintained composure under pressure. They did not allow fear or chaos to consume them. Instead, they acted as a steady presence, guiding others through difficulty with clarity and confidence. Another key aspect of being a stabilizing force is consistency. Many people are unpredictable in their behavior, changing their moods, opinions, and actions based on how they feel in the moment. This makes them unreliable. A stabilizing force, however, is consistent in their actions, values, and temperament. They do what they say they will do. They do not shift their behavior based on external pressures or fleeting emotion. This consistency builds trust. People respect and rely on those who are steady and dependable, knowing that they will respond thoughtfully rather than erratically. Being a stabilizing force also requires the ability to provide perspective. Many people get lost in the small details of a problem, allowing temporary setbacks to consume them. They exaggerate difficulties, focus on the worst possible outcomes, and spiral into negativity. But a stabilizing force steps back and sees the bigger picture. They remind themselves and others that challenges are temporary, that setbacks are part of life, and that panic only makes things worse. They bring rationality to emotional situations, helping others see past their immediate fears and focus on solutions rather than problems. Developing this mindset requires patience and self-awareness. It is not something that happens overnight. It takes time to learn to regulate emotions, stay consistent in behavior, and provide perspective in difficult moments. But those who commit to developing these qualities become invaluable to those around them. They become the people others turn to in times of need, not because they have all the answers, but because they provide a sense of stability in an unstable world. Being a stabilizing force also applies to personal relationships. In any relationship, whether romantic, familial, or professional, there will be conflicts, misunderstandings, and emotional ups and downs. Many people respond to these moments by escalating the situation, allowing their emotions to dictate their actions, or withdrawing entirely. But a stabilizing force remains composed. They listen before reacting. They choose their words carefully. They do not add fuel to the fire, but instead seek to de-escalate conflict and bring understanding. This ability makes them a source of strength and trust in their relationships, rather than a source of instability. Another important aspect of being a stabilizing force is self-reliance. Many people look to external factors, other people, circumstances, or luck, to determine their state of mind. If things go well, they feel good. If things go badly, they fall apart. But a stabilizing force takes responsibility for their own mindset. They do not rely on external validation to feel secure. They cultivate inner strength so that no matter what happens around them, they remain steady.